Justice Sonia Sotomayor grilled Trump's attorney John Sawyer on the notion of granting presidents absolute immunity.
A corrupt person, and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him. Is that within his official acts that for which he can get immunity?
Previously, Sawyer had argued that the president could order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate one of his political rivals and not face any consequences for it.
Imagine giving the president a legal get-out-of-jail-free card forever. That's exactly what the Supreme Court just did, and Justice Sotomayor is calling it a king-above-the-law moment. How does this change not only Trump's future, but every president after him? The answer could shake the very foundation of democracy as we know it. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video.
Donald Trump's federal election interference trial, one of the last chances to hold him accountable for the crimes of January 6th before the upcoming election.
To authorize the prosecution of a president for his official acts would open a Pandora's box from which this nation may never recover.
His lawyers stood before the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, probably the second most important court in all the land, and before the nation and those three judges argued that a president can effectively do whatever he wants.
What if presidents had a secret weapon, one that let them sidestep accountability and walk away from any mess they created? That's exactly the superpower the Supreme Court just handed out with their latest ruling. The concept is called presumptive immunity. Sounds like something you'd find in a sci-fi movie, right? But no, it's real. And legal scholars are already calling it one of the most controversial developments in constitutional law this century. Essentially, it's the idea that a president cannot be held liable for certain actions while in office because, get this, it might interfere with their ability to do their job. It's like saying, we can't stop Superman from wrecking the city while fighting a villain because it's part of the job. Now apply that logic to politics, and it's not nearly as heroic. Now here's where things take a twist. This ruling has created a potential shield for Trump in his January 6th trial. Remember that day? The attack on the Capitol, the chants, the chaos? Many argue Trump's words and actions played a key role in igniting that firestorm, but critics are saying this decision gives him a legal trump card. Justice Sotomayor, who clearly isn't one to mince words, described it as handing the president a crown. Imagine that. A democratic nation crowned with unchecked power at the very top. Her dissent wasn't just legal jargon, it was a fiery condemnation of what she sees as a dangerous precedent. You know it's serious when a Supreme Court justice sounds more like she's narrating a Shakespearean tragedy. Think of it this way. It's like giving someone a lifetime Monopoly card that says, skip jail forever, no matter how much chaos they cause while playing the game. You cheated? Skip jail. You bankrupted everyone else? Still, skip jail. The game continues for everyone else, but one player gets to rewrite the rules as they go. That's essentially the privilege presumptive immunity offers. It's an idea so wild you almost expect to hear it came from someone brainstorming over cartoons and Yoo-hoo. And yet, here we are. This legal theory is now playing out in real life, inside a courtroom that wields immense power. The reasoning behind this ruling? According to the court's majority opinion, holding a president accountable could interfere with their job responsibilities. In other words, we wouldn't want the stress of a trial to distract them from leading the nation. Think about how broad that is. It doesn't just shield a president from criminal consequences. They could argue almost anything is tied to their presidential duties. Critics, of course, are rolling their eyes, and their legal briefs. They point out that the presidency already comes with tons of perks, from Air Force One to executive privilege. Do we really need to add near unbreakable legal protection to the list? At what point does presidential immunity become presidential invincibility? But let's step back from the Trump circus for a moment, because this isn't just about him. Sure, he's likely the immediate beneficiary, but think for a second about what this means going forward. What happens when a future president realizes they can play by their own rules without consequences? Today, it's Trump and January 6th. Tomorrow, it could be the next president refusing to follow court orders, making up laws on the fly, or punishing political opponents with no fear of retaliation. This ruling isn't a one-time deal. It's a whole new playbook for anyone in the Oval Office. It's like discovering you can go 120 miles per hour on the highway and the police can't do anything about it because, oh, you're going to a really important meeting. And for those thinking, well, Congress can always step in, let's not kid ourselves. Congress is about as effective at checking power these days as trying to stop a flood with a roll of duct tape. That leaves us with the courts. And now, they've essentially put the presidency on a legal pedestal, high above everyone else. Justice Sotomayor's dissent nailed the emotional stakes of this decision. She warned in no uncertain terms that we're staring down a future where presidents act as a king above the law, a phrase that should send shivers down your spine no matter where you land politically. The scariest part? This isn't some abstract theoretical scenario, it's happening now. The Supreme Court has effectively redefined the presidency, not as a position of considerable influence, but as one of nearly limitless power. Presidents have always been powerful, sure, but now we're in new territory. Historically, checks and balances have been what makes our system work. This ruling doesn't just erode those, it absolutely bulldozes them. If you think this is just legal mumbo-jumbo that doesn't affect you, think again. This decision sets the stage for a seismic shift in how our democracy functions, and frankly, it's not looking pretty. Presidents aren't just getting more power, they're inching closer to becoming untouchable. And, like it or not, we all get to live in the world they create next. Imagine a government where Congress debates laws all day, but instead of those laws having teeth, they're basically suggestions. Courts try to check the president, but their rulings end up like background noise, easily ignored or brushed off. Sounds far-fetched? The Supreme Court's latest decision might have just laid the foundation for that reality. With one ruling, presidential power now feels like a highway with no speed limit while everyone else has to stick to the rules. And the worry isn't just Trump. This shifts power in a way that could permanently tilt the balance in favor of whoever occupies the Oval Office, regardless of the party. Here's how this works. With this new ruling, presidents aren't just getting a legal swipe card to avoid accountability. They're effectively becoming the center of gravity in the government, pulling power away from other branches and hoarding it at the top. Congress and federal agencies, they're suddenly on the sidelines. The ruling doesn't just remove checks and balances, it weakens the fundamental structure of democracy itself. Justice Sotomayor made it clear in her dissent, a president operating above the law isn't just some flawed politician who needs reining in. It's a shift toward monarchy light, where one person calls the shots and the rest is just window dressing. Picture this. You're playing a board game, a tough game with rules that keep everything fair for everyone involved. But now one player gets to rewrite the rules whenever they want. They decide how to play, what moves are valid, and even who gets to win. Meanwhile, everyone else is still stuck trying to play by the original rulebook. That's what this ruling does to the American presidency. It doesn't just tilt the scale slightly, it breaks the scale entirely. And if we're honest with ourselves, it leaves the rest of the government looking more like set dressing than meaningful guardrails. There's a reason this feels like part of a bigger trend. Take a look at recent rulings from the Supreme Court. These decisions aren't isolated. They follow a noticeable pattern. The court has been chipping away at federal agencies' authority for some time now. Remember the Chevron doctrine? It used to give agencies like the EPA the power to interpret laws when Congress wasn't crystal clear. Not anymore. Recent rulings have pulled back on that doctrine, essentially telling federal agencies, you don't get the final say. Instead, courts themselves have taken over the role of interpreting laws, a change critics say makes government less effective and opens the door for corporate or partisan influence. And speaking of legal testing grounds, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has been busy carving out these exact types of theories for years. Critics even call it the meth lab of conservative grievance, because it cranks out rulings designed to push boundaries and see what sticks. The Supreme Court doesn't always agree with it, but the Fifth Circuit has a way of planting seeds that later grow into full Supreme Court decisions. This approach has paved the way for decisions that stretch or outright ignore legal precedent, all while presenting themselves as just another interpretation of the Constitution. So what's the endgame here? This is bigger than Trump or any single person who holds the presidency. The judiciary is redrawing the boundaries of power, not just for presidents, but for the entire federal system. For you, the everyday citizen, this means a government that's increasingly top-heavy. Weaker agencies can't enforce critical regulations. Congress is stuck passing laws that the president might never follow. And democracy starts looking a whole lot more fragile when accountability becomes optional for those at the top. Trust in government plays a huge part here too. It's hard enough to believe in institutions when they're gridlocked or inefficient, but when rulings like this one make you feel like the deck is stacked, public confidence takes a hit. If you can't trust that someone, somewhere, is keeping the system honest, then what's the point? People already feel disconnected from Washington. It's rulings like these that turn disconnection into outright disillusionment. Here's the kicker. This isn't theory. It's not some distant scenario waiting to unfold down the road. It's real. It's happening. And we're already living with the consequences. When you let one branch of government start hoarding power, it doesn't just stay there. It spills over. It affects everything, from the air you breathe, to the taxes you pay, to the rights you think are protected. This ruling underscores a monumental shift in how democracy operates. And it's not just some dry legal debate. It is the system we all rely on being reshaped in ways so fundamental we can't always see the ripple effects until they hit us squarely in the face. And while it might feel like this is beyond the average person's control, that's not entirely true. Power always flows downward if enough people push back. Democracy may be bending under the weight of unchecked authority, but it's not broken. Not yet. The Supreme Court's ruling isn't some dry legal update. It's a complete reshuffle of who holds the power cards in our democracy. By placing the presidency on a higher, almost untouchable level, the court didn't just interpret the law, it redefined how the system works. If we don't challenge these changes, we may wake up in a democracy that only exists on paper, not in practice. The real question isn't just about what presidents can get away with, it's about what citizens are willing to tolerate. Stay curious, stay loud, and don't let silence reshape the rules we all live by.